Create a warm and engaging narrative for your podcast. Consider Green Tell Me as a suggestion that combines an upbeat and inviting spirit without any background music. Welcome to Tangelic Talks, your go-to podcast from Tangelic, where we dive into the vibrant world of clean energy, development, sustainability, and climate change in Africa. We bring you inspiring stories, insightful discussions, and groundbreaking innovations from the continent making waves in the global community. Tune in and join the conversation toward a brighter, greener future. Let's get started.
Welcome to Tangelic Talks, a podcast at the intersection of energy, equity, and empowerment with your co-hosts, Victoria Cornelio and myself, Jensen Cummings. In today's episode, we go from special ops to green energy with our guest, Eric Lyon. Eric is the CEO and owner of GW Strategies, a company dedicated to investing intelligence in the green energy sector. Prior to this, Eric spent his career as an Army officer conducting worldwide special operations and competitive intelligence. Eric published The Lithium Economy, a critical analysis of the global lithium value chain in 2023, and Feed the Dragon, How China Secures Its Battery Minerals from the African Continent in 2024. Eric, thanks for being with us.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
This is going to be a great conversation. Special ops to green energy does not seem like the normal trajectory. So I'm fascinated to hear kind of what was the spark that made that shift? What was the catalyst for that for you personally?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I had to bet money on this ever happening in my life, I wouldn't have taken the bet. I spent my career in the military, mostly special operations, and kind of towards the end of my career, I did a program through what they call the Senior Service College, and I applied for a fellowship. I got accepted to a fellowship at Harvard at the John F. Kennedy School, specifically what they call the Belfer Center. So I did a one-year fellowship there, and you had to pick a topic, a strategic topic of concern. As military guys and women in my cohort, it's about 19 people, everyone picked military stuff. How to retain pilots in the Navy, just tons of stuff. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I want to do something different, and I want to push myself. I don't want to do what I've done my whole life. Like I've had enough at this point. And so I said, well, I'm going to assess climate change as a national security threat. So that's the subject I picked. I picked all the courses I wanted to take to support it, and I learned a lot. And if man-made global warming is the problem, well, what's the solution? It's transition to a global green economy. Having said that, that's a lot. There's a lot to take on board. It's a lot to understand. It's a huge topic. You can get lost in just one subset of that topic for sure. But I also started investing in it as well. And towards the end of my career, I was getting out of the military. I didn't want to play the game anymore. Wanted to do something different. So I also started to invest in the green energy space. But as I looked into it, and I kind of went to the foundational roots of different companies. Like if you're going to put your own life savings in this, that kind of wakes you up. It woke me up. I'm not just putting my money into something by something my Aunt May told me or something. Like I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to research this. A lot of things led to supply chains, especially with electric vehicles. They lead to batteries. They lead to battery minerals, and how do you get them? And if you don't have those minerals or access to them, you don't have a battery, you don't have an electric vehicle, you don't have paired battery and solar for energy solutions. So that's why I kind of got interested in the topic. And lithium was hot at the time. It was kind of an unknown element, and people were realizing like in 2020, like, oh, this is vitally important to every aspect of low carbon solutions. And not a lot of people were really moving forward in that space. So anyways, that's why I did that first book. Right? And my books I do for myself. I do it to educate myself, rid myself of my own ignorance as much as one can. And it's a journey for me. If someone else can learn from it, hey, that's great. If you find value in it, good for you. I would like you to. But ultimately, I do it for myself. And I tell people, I got other friends writing books, I'm like, you better do this for yourself. You're probably not the next Stephen King, even though you want to be. You better do this for yourself because you might make $10 a year if you're lucky. So be happy with it for yourself and what you did for yourself. So that's why I did it. It was educational. And then after having done that first work, I kind of wanted to spread my aperture a little bit. And I've been reading a lot about China going in Africa. And there's a lot of myths about it. And, China owns Africa and everything there is the Chinese own it. So let me look into this. What actually is going on? So that led me to, my second book that I wrote on that, which I learned a lot. I had a lot of, misconceptions about it. So I really went in depth on that. With my stuff, I try to go deep. These are, 450-page books. I do history, politics, culture, war, trade, commerce. I try to be thorough. Although I'm not Stephen King, I'm hoping someone will look at the book and be like, he's competent. As long as someone says I'm competent, I'm good. Hey, mission success. So anyways, that's how I kind of got into those. And then that led me to my current work, about halfway done with it. By the way, it takes me about a year and 3,000 hours to do a book, at least for the ones I do. It takes a minute. So I'm doing a book on the U.S.'s critical minerals strategy, or most likely the lack thereof. So my work has kind of been a stepping stone. One led to the other, leads to the other. And I'm like, I just need to tackle critical minerals. It's very topical. People are finally have some sort of understanding of it, and that we're really haven't done that well in the space. Let me tackle this. Let me dig in. So I'm in the process of that. And it's been very educational.
Yeah, and you talk about it with a lot of passion, because it sounds like these books, like you said, they're for yourself, and then if it helps someone, great. But it sounds like you sort of go down these rabbit holes and figure it out, and then share what you found through those rabbit holes with the rest of us. So I want to dive into that lithium economy you mentioned. But first, can you give us some examples of what things we use that use lithium, that are involved in this lithium economy, so we can sort of give listeners a perspective of why this is such a critical mineral?
Yeah, right. And that's a good question. And I find, myself included, until I started kind of researching this, we take this for granted. We take for granted that our mineral resources will always be there. They always have been there. They just magically show up somehow. But I went to a conference a couple months ago, and someone made this statement, and now I use it. Everything you see, touch, feel is either grown or mined. And the stuff that's grown, you used elements from mining to process or manufacture it. There's literally nothing. You look around your room. I ask anyone, look around anyone in your room or where you're sitting. There is nothing in there that isn't mined or is the result of mining. I also say we have cell phone syndrome. You look at your cell phone, there's 35 different minerals in your cell phone. They don't all come from the U.S. and they cannot. That's why, you got to have like a comprehensive strategy. Also, we are a battery dependent society. I don't think anyone goes through their day without being dependent on a battery in some way, shape, or form. If you've got a laptop, you've got your cell phone, any small portable electronic devices, watches, I don't know, calculators when they used to make calculators. Maybe your grandparents has one in a drawer or something. But anything with a battery, your car uses a battery. Like a Tesla vehicle, I have a Tesla, it has a lead acid battery. Like under the hood, I'm like, really? Anyway, we're going to get that. But we're battery dependent. And you know what? They're lithium ion batteries. And they're just about in everything you see or touch that requires a battery. It's probably a lithium ion battery.
Yeah, and in the book, you delve into some of the challenges that we face with this lithium supply chain. What would those be then? So, because like you said, we can't get everything from the U.S. Or, for example, I'm based in England. I'm sure we don't get most of it from here. So why is there a challenge there with the supply chain?
England makes the U.S. look like we have a good critical mineral supply strategy, and that's saying something. But yeah, the U.S. Isn't competitive in the lithium space within its geographic boundaries anymore. The U.S. was the world's leading producer of lithium until I think like the earlier mid 90s, but it wasn't being used for batteries primarily. It was a whole host of things. Like there's like lithium grease. There's a lot of like industrial products we use lithium for. It wasn't big business. So we offshored a lot of our lithium capacity heading up until the 80s and 90s. And I say, and this affects probably like every mineral in our country and probably Western developed countries. we've been priced out. The U.S. suffers from a wealth inflation trap. The more money, we got the biggest GDP in the world, everything goes up. Every price goes up, everything, including mining. So the consistent thing I've seen, like on my current research, where I'm assessing the 50 different critical minerals, the consistent thing of why this stuff's been offshored, like lithium, we've been priced out. It's too expensive to do it in the U.S., and they do it somewhere else in the world. The U.S. closed down its lithium hard rock mines in the late 80s and 90s, primarily in North Carolina. It was too expensive. So we went to cheaper locations like the Lithium Triangle in South America, where they do brine operations. And they get lithium from brine, and it's cheaper. So the industry is, based on profits. So it's cheaper to go to South America. So we closed up shop in the U.S. largely, and then we went to South America. But look at that supply chain now. Instead of trucks going from North Carolina to wherever for a battery, now you're going to ship it in. And are you going to go through the Panama Canal? Are you going to go to Long Beach on the West Coast? You're going to go to, Savannah on the East Coast. What port are you going to go to? Now you got issues. And now your supply chain is complicated. And that's just lithium. and the lithium, and the U.S. doesn't make lithium batteries. We assemble them, we use them, we don't make them.
Right. And then I'm imagining that creates a sort of dependency there where if you're depending on all these things to go smoothly, as we saw in, for example, COVID, things didn't go that smoothly, did they? So what are some of the risks associated with that dependency on lithium and other critical minerals?
Yeah, that is a great question. I did a presentation a week ago about how critical minerals impact the grid. But naturally, you're talking about batteries, et cetera, because they use that to back the grid. I showed a slide on the battery supply chain, including lithium, for how Panasonic makes its batteries. Because Tesla in the U.S. Partners with Panasonic. Panasonic makes their batteries at the cell level. Tesla doesn't. I showed this slide, and I'm like, folks, if your head hurts, that is the right answer, because mine does. And like I'm in the business, and you're looking where, lithium goes halfway across the planet from the Lithium Triangle. It goes to China, or goes to Japan, or goes to South Korea. They use it to make cathodes. They also have to, pair it up with the negative terminal of the battery, which is graphite. Maybe you get your cobalt from the DRC, or maybe you get it from Finland. And then it all goes back to Asia, because that's the center of battery manufacturing. And then these cells, or the cathode material or the anode material, that's the positive, negative terminals of the battery, gets shipped all the way across the planet back to the U.S. again to be assembled, like with Panasonic, at the Gigafactory in Nevada, and then that's turned into an actual battery that will then go into an actual car to make a battery. And you're like, wow. I think someone guesstimated it was like 50,000 miles of total travel for all the different components of a battery, all the minerals that come together to make a battery and then to be assembled in a usable form. You should be amazed if nothing goes wrong. If the supply chain actually works, that should be amazing to us. Because like you saw with COVID, any little thing that gums up the works, you got problems. You got disruption, which automatically means inflation. It's I tell people it's like Kanye West dating Kim Kardashian. It's complicated. We're dating. I know they moved on. I got it.
That's great. So, I mean, it is very much a house of cards. And what do you see being those potential top disruptors in that as you're doing kind of your research? What are the things maybe that are top of the list for you, or maybe some of the more surprising ones that were unexpected that nobody's paying attention to?
So I would say trade wars. You start putting big tariffs on stuff that we don't have and we must import, you're going to create problems for yourself. Of the 50 identified critical minerals by U.S. Geological Survey, half of them are majority sourced through China. Over decades, we've allowed China to gain control of our critical mineral supply chains. So at least half of them, 25, are majority sourced through China. Okay, we let them do it. We did it in the 90s when we didn't fear China, when they were small and had a big population and they would never go anywhere. And what does the U.S. care about? Small margin, dumb batteries. Who cares? Well, that's grown over time. And now we do care. So you start doing, trade wars and high tariffs on metals and minerals, that like just a blanket thing, like 25% on China. Okay, well, your prices are going to go up for those 25 critical minerals that come from them. So that's something to think about. And I think any kind of tariff, depending on how important it is to you, should be targeted. This needs to be specific. You really need to think this through, and you really need to understand your own supply chains. Most American leaders don't understand our supply chains and don't understand the trickle-down effects. I'll give you one example, gallium. Most people probably don't know anything about gallium. It's used in semiconductors and solar panel wafers, etc. China has an absolute monopoly on gallium. They produce 99% of the world's gallium. And this is intentional. They have done this to achieve global economic leverage. They know what they're doing. So if you want to tariff that or you want to restrict it, it all comes from China. Like the U.S. may be looking, well, we get it from Belgium and Germany and the Netherlands. No. Those are the middlemen. Those are the guys who get it, in between you and China, and then they tack on their middleman prices because they refine it because you don't. Understand the source comes from China. And if they want to squeeze us, and shut that off, they can. And I won't go too much into this unless you guys want to, but we don't have a national defense stockpile. We used to have one when intelligent people and adults said, hey, we should have some kind of critical mineral insurance in case of something like this. That idea has been forgotten. Out of a 1 year theoretical supply of our critical minerals, we have 4% of it. So I think we could, if you want to add that together, we have enough mineral security for 6 weeks, something like that. But anyway, so as you start to do the trade war, you start to maybe cut off some of these minerals, and China's going to retaliate. China just doesn't go along. They retaliate. They're not a little guy in the yard to be pushed around anymore. They will retaliate, and we've already seen that.
And in Feed the Dragon, you sort of explore China's strategy for securing battery minerals from Africa, but also the way they've also done it themselves, like you're saying, because with the example you just gave of 4% only giving you 6 weeks, obviously there are some faults there that are happening. So how do you think they've been able to do it in a way that might be replicable, or is this something very case specific to China has found a way that other people haven't?
That's a great question. Yogi Berra could probably do a quote on this. He'd be like, hey, know what the most important thing is about a critical mineral strategy? Is having one. Like, you actually got to have one and follow it. The U.S. for decades, even to this day, even though we've been doing better, we have parts of a strategy. We have a Frankenstein collection of different parts that don't always work together of a strategy. China has had a disciplined critical mineral strategy that has remained constant across administrations and leaders. And they know exactly what they need to do. They understand that minerals are critical or the foundation of their economies and their societies. They get that. U.S. takes it for granted. China does not. And the U.S., officials on occasion will be, and I've seen it, throughout history, the administration comes in, oh my gosh, we don't have a critical mineral strategy. We're so vulnerable. What's going on? And then that happens administration after administration after administration. Those conversations are never had in Beijing. Beijing is not behind the 8 ball on critical minerals because they've had a disciplined plan since the 90s to secure them. And if I could give you one example with Africa, with Morocco, it took me a while to figure out what was going on. Chinese battery companies have moved into Morocco. Morocco has the largest deposits of phosphate, which are used for lithium iron phosphate batteries. Morocco controls their phosphate. It's nationalized. No one's coming in and mining it. No one's taking it from them and taking the profits. It is Moroccan national property. China's like, okay, so we can't bring the phosphate to us. We're going to go to the phosphate. So I think there's 6 different $1 billion with a B dollar lithium iron phosphate battery factories being constructed in Morocco. 5 are Chinese. 1 is half Chinese owned, half South Korean owned. So, and I'm like, what's going on here? I'm trying to figure it out. And then I've been reading about the U.S. critical mineral strategy in World War II when we had one. And we did something called a preventive purchasing program with tungsten, using armored piercing projectiles, armor for tanks, tons of stuff. The U.S. started buying up all the tungsten they could find. So the Japanese and the Germans and the Italians couldn't get it. If we bought it and all the contracts, we own the contract, you simply have nothing to buy. Therefore, you can't get it. And that was very clever. That's what China's doing in Morocco. They have filled the space so completely. I mean, do you think there's room for a seventh $1 billion factory to make batteries? There's no more room. They've done a preventative production strategy where they flooded it with so much production. There's no room for anybody. There's no room in the neighborhood for another battery plant. So you've been squeezed out. If the U.S. was even going to get into space, I was talking to a friend who was in the battery sales business. He's like, remember, the U.S. doesn't make batteries. We assemble batteries. There is no American company to move into Morocco. There's no European company to move into Morocco. But China's also making sure if you do get that capability, there's no room for you. And this is strategic, because Morocco, has free trade agreements with the European Union. They're across from the Strait of Gibraltar, which is 7-8 miles. So in, maybe 45 minutes, you can have your batteries trucking across the Mediterranean. They'll land in Europe. And now Morocco is your preferred provider for lithium iron phosphate batteries. And you know what? You don't have anyone else to choose from. So they've monopolized that. And it's very clever, but you know what? They just did it.
And nobody stopped them, stood in their way, or had a better strategy or any strategy. So who is ultimately responsible for leading the way in that strategy development? Is it energy? Is it defense? Where is that? Is it the private sector? Where do you imagine that the United States has even an inkling of a chance to be a part of the conversation when it comes to future strategies around those minerals?
That's a great question. And one would think would be obvious, but it isn't. And that's what I've been working on in this current book. It's got to be at the presidential level. The presidential level must have a comprehensive, effective mineral strategy. It's got to come from the top down. And then you got to branch it out to the different cabinets. Because we've tried that before. We have delegated responsibility down to the Department of Defense to manage the National Defense Stockpile. Department of Defense doesn't even care a little bit about managing the National Defense Stockpile. You wouldn't have a 4% fill rate for even just a year. We used to have a stockpile of 5 years for every critical mineral we had. Now that makes sense. We're down to 4%. Department of Defense doesn't care about managing a stockpile. That was, kind of forced upon them, through politics, and the Defense Logistics Agency manages it. Clearly, they don't care, or you would have had it filled out. Just give me a year. I'm not asking for much. Or gallium, where China has an absolute monopoly. I have a 10-year supply of gallium. We use it in pretty small quantities. It didn't happen. So we've tried to delegate this, and it didn't go anywhere because these departments, it wasn't their main thing. The Department of Defense wants to fight wars. They don't want to put lithium in warehouses, so they blow it off. It's got to be at the national level. You got to have Congress involved. All the big levers of government need to understand this as a priority and then put some effort into it. And then you got to hold people accountable and make it happen. We haven't done that. Largely, cohesively, we haven't done it. Even to this day, we have parts of a strategy.
Can you give us an idea in the dollar amount? You said 4%, 6 weeks potentially. We used to have 5 years. I'm interested in how much money would we be looking at investing if we say had a 1 year supply? Give us, are we in the hundreds of billions? Are we in the trillions? Where are we at?
It's about 12.5 billion is what we would need for a 1 year supply. And the U.S. mentality has gone from 5 year supply, post World War II. We thought that's what a war would look like. Then 3 year supply. as we started to think, well, we'll have a global nuclear war. Society will be devastated. We won't even be able to mine. So then the timeline started to get shortened. Then about in the Nixon administration, they figured out they could sell these for a profit. So we started selling off our stockpile to balance the budget. So, immediate political expediency took over, and it wasn't for the national good anymore, or for national defense and having that security. So we started to sell it off, and we kept selling it off ever since. Now we're down to 4% of a theoretical 1-year supply. And that 4%, and that was just based on if we had 100% for the 50 different critical minerals. Obviously, for most of them, we have nothing. We have nothing in the stockpile. We don't have a day's supply. So everything got cut off, and then the slack in the global chain ran out. You're left for nothing. But that's like having, being a parent with kids, and you have one nickel in the bank, and you can't pay your rent for a month. This isn't conceptually hard. It's let's have some insurance. Let's have some money in the bank. Let's have a little bit of a backup for the national economy.
Yeah, and it sounds like in this current climate then, there is nothing else but relying on these international alliances, I would imagine, and trying to keep a cordial global, relationship going. But I wonder, how does that impact then our move to the energy transition and renewables and more clean energy? Because I can imagine a lot of these critical minerals are critical for this energy transition.
You're absolutely right. You're talking batteries, right? You're talking, the lithium, cobalt, the manganese, graphite. A lot of people don't think about graphite. China has a virtual monopoly on graphite as well, but they do it intentionally. I just want to mention, when this green energy, movement kind of came about, in its current form, with a lot of momentum behind it, China saw the opportunity to get into the ground floor of this and then to dominate it so that they could get global economic leverage. This is intentional. So as you look across the green energy span, you talk solar panels. Yeah, there's silver, tellurium, aluminum frames, and all this stuff. But the solar wafer, the heart of the solar cell, is what really makes it operate. China produces 97% of those in the world. It's an absolute monopoly. They have pricing power. They control it. That's intentional. They want to control the global solar market for leverage. Look at wind. Most wind turbines and systems are built in China. Now, they use rare earth permanent magnets. They have a virtual monopoly on rare earth permanent magnets. The U.S. imports 93% of its permanent magnets directly from China. And then you look at the batteries. China is controlling as much as they can. I think only about 2/3 of lithium actually goes through China for batteries, but you can't make a battery without graphite. And so when it comes to the graphite anode, I've seen most assessments range between 98 and 99% of all those anodes using graphite are made in China. And then other analysts just give up. They're stop it, stop the nonsense. It's 100%. Just say China's got all of it. Okay, instead of trying to parse out where these anodes are made, just say China's got all of it. China has intentionally moved to control the green energy production globally. It's intentional. They want that leverage because they want to be the most influential country in the world and supplant the U.S. by 2049. From the U.S. perspective, we need to work with our alliances. We need friends in the neighborhood. We need to treat Canada and Mexico as part of the U.S.'s national mineral industrial base. We can't treat them separately. I don't see how you can tariff Japan and South Korea on different critical minerals they have and have any sort of a cohesive, mineral security strategy. I think that's a contradiction, a pretty clear contradiction.
Eric, we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, you're telling me?
We have a lot of work to do. This has been really enlightening, and I can just feel my lack of education as you're saying gallium, and I'm well, I'm one of those who has no idea what that is. I've never heard of it and have utilized it unbeknownst and just blindly moving through the world. So appreciate you shining light on that. That's why we have these conversations. So for everybody, once again, this is going from special ops to green energy to critical minerals and everything in between with Eric Lyon of GW Strategies. We're going to stay on with Eric for a little longer, learn a little bit more, get in the weeds a little bit more with some more technical information, as always, with the blog post. So make sure to go to tangeliclife.org and learn more about the work that Eric's doing. And we'll link up the books as well, so you can help Eric's work and fuel that, so he can make more than $10 a year and be the next Stephen King. I know he would appreciate that. Once again, this is Tangelic Talks. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Appreciate Eric for being our guest.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much.
Let's talk power, let's talk change. From rural lights to brighter days. Equity rising, voices strong. We're building tomorrow where we all belong. Tangelic Talks, energy, equity, pride. Empowering the world, side by side. A spark becomes a fire, a vision that's true. Together we rise, it starts with you.